horrors have always lurked in the darkness of the woods. Demons, child-eating witches, big bad wolves. While this monster may have no face at all, that won't stop his long, twisted arms from reaching into your window at night and striking terror into your soul. That's right, it's one of the internet age's most infamous boogeymen, the legendary Slender Man. The Slender Man is easy to pick out in a lineup. He's a freakishly tall and stick-thin man with long, grasping limbs. He wears a dark suit and has a misshapen white head with no facial features. He's also often depicted with black tentacles emerging from his back. There was a time when you couldn't avoid the Slender Man. Scary images, memes, ARGs, parodies, cosplay, toys, and even a 2018 movie. You may think the Slender Man is just pretend, another goofy creepypasta monster along the lines of Jeff the Killer and the Rake. But that couldn't be further from the truth. The Slender Man crawled out of the world of fiction and into real life. Unlike a lot of urban legends told to us by a friend of a friend, we know the definitive source of the Slender Man. On June 10th, 2009, the Something Awful forums hosted a Photoshop contest that encouraged users to create creepy, paranormal images. One user, Eric Knudsen, under the username Victor Surge, posted 2 images that changed the internet forever. The first image had the caption, "We didn't want to go. We didn't want to kill them. But its persistent silence and outstretched arms horrified and comforted us at the same time." It was dated to 1983 and attributed to an unknown photographer who was presumed dead. If you look closely, you can see the Slender Man looming in the background. The second image showed him a little more clearly. This one had the caption, "One of 2 recovered photographs from the Sterling City Library blaze, notable for being taken the day which 14 children vanished and for what is referred to as the Slender Man deformities, cited as film defects by officials. Fire at library occurred 1 week later, actual photograph confiscated as evidence." This one was dated 1986 and credited to Mary Thomas, who it also stated had been missing since June 13th of the same year. And on that day, a terrifying legend was born. Details about the beast were sparse, besides the fact that it was mysterious and seemed to prey on children especially. What exactly the Slender Man is, why it does what it does, and what actually happens to the people it takes was a mystery. But something about these images captured the imagination of the internet, and fans grasped the few details they'd been given and ran with it. As the creepy grandfather of modern horror, H.P. Lovecraft always loved to say, "The oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear, and the oldest and strongest kind of fear is fear of the unknown." And the Slender Man wouldn't stay unknown for long. The gaps in our knowledge about this new nightmare prompted thousands of fans to fill the void with their own ideas and fictions. He blew up on the creepypasta circuit, becoming the focus of countless stories shared across the web. Little by little, more details about the Slender Man were crowdsourced, and a collective hub of information, referred to as the Slender Man mythos, was formed. He had crossovers with other famous creepypasta beasties, like Jeff the Killer, Smile Dog, and Laughing Jack. In the internet horror world, he'd become a household name. Soon, the Slender Man would hit YouTube. A small group of creators would launch an alternate reality game, or ARG series, known as Marble Hornets. The series had a found footage style and told the story of a group of amateur filmmakers working on a student film when they were harassed by a number of supernatural entities. Most popular among these was a creature called the Operator, which is functionally identical to the Slender Man in both appearance and behavior. This series became massively popular, amassing over 55 million total views. It even spawned a few spin-offs from different teams, including Everyman Hybrid and Tribe 12, along with legions of fan imitations. The simplistic design of the Slender Man made him incredibly easy to imitate or recreate. Cosplayers could easily become the Slender Man with a morph suit and act in Slender Man fan films, of which there are many. The faceless creature was also much easier to draw than some of its more complex creepypasta contemporaries, meaning there were reams of fan art from artists of all skill levels. He was becoming a powerful mimetic monster. The internet had caught Slender Man fever, and things were still heating up. In 2012, the Slender Man got its first taste of truly mainstream success with the release of a free indie game called Slender, The 8 Pages. In its first month of release, it got over 2 million downloads and had popular playthroughs from some of the biggest gaming YouTubers in the world, such as Markiplier and PewDiePie. The game was so popular that people who never even heard of the concept of creepypasta had suddenly heard of the Slender Man, and it quickly became an obsession. The success of the first game also led to a huge number of sequels and spin-offs, including Slender, The Arrival, and Slender Asylum. The Slender Man had quickly become one of the internet's most marketable properties, and the money had begun to flow. Kickstarters were created for more Slender Man fan films, some of which raised thousands of dollars. Thanks to the sheer number of people involved in what had now become the Slender Man creative community, a more solid canon around what exactly the Slender Man was all about began to coalesce. Since Marble Hornets, the Slender Man has been associated with the following symbol. In the stories, it's often carved into the bark of trees or scrawled onto paper in his presence. Being attacked by the Slender Man is seen more as a form of psychological violence rather than the simple claws and teeth of your standard monster. He can stalk his victims over days, or sometimes weeks, teleporting to where they least expect and inflicting terror whenever he can. Victims of the Slender Man supposedly report having slender sickness, a kind of illness caused by exposure to the Slender Man's power, characterized by paranoia, headaches, nosebleeds, and a persistent sense of dread. One of two things will then happen to a victim of the Slender Man. The more common result of a slender stalking is the victim simply disappearing, and what happens after that is unknown. It's likely that the Slender Man's victims are killed after being taken, but the particulars of what method he uses or how long it takes are a mystery. The second thing that could potentially happen to a victim of the Slender Man is even more terrifying. The victim could become a proxy. Another element introduced into the Slender Man mythos by Marble Hornets. Proxies are people whose minds have been warped by the Slender Man. Initially, these people were just deranged and violent, but later, they became servants of the Slender Man. Proxies would do his bidding and perform acts of violence on his behalf. This brings us to the real reason that the Slender Man is such an infamous monster online after years of just being a creepy meme, the real crime supposedly inspired by his legend. Slender Man truly came to life in Waukesha, Wisconsin. Two teenage girls were developing a dangerous obsession with a number of fictional characters, with the most prominent among them being the Slender Man. They had heard about the proxy element of the mythos, and perhaps out of fear or a desire to commit violence, they claimed that they wanted to work for the Slender Man. In their twisted psyches, the first step to becoming a proxy was murdering someone in the name of the Slender Man. While of course this is crazy, the Slender Man isn't actually real after all. It didn't stop these two girls from going through with it. On May 31st, 2014, they led a friend of theirs into a nearby forest and stabbed her 19 times with a knife. They'd later say that this horrendous act was done in an attempt to sacrifice her to the Slender Man. Thankfully, in spite of the brutal attack, their victim survived and managed to get help. She has since recovered, and her two attackers have been convicted and imprisoned for their crimes. The reputation of the Slender Man as a fictional character didn't survive the incident. Many believe that this awful tragedy turned the tide of public opinion on the Slender Man, beginning its slow but irreversible decline. Being tied to a real-life attempted murder made it harder for many to enjoy the character in the same way they had when it only existed in the glow of a screen, and little by little, fan interest fell away. In 2018, an official studio movie adaptation of the character hit theaters, but the movie was panned by both audiences and critics. The era of the Slender Man was over. He was, for all intents and purposes, a dead meme. But the idea of the Slender Man is something that can never really die. Before the Slender Man, legends of child-snatching creatures have existed in pretty much every culture across the globe. After the Slender Man, other internet monsters like Trevor Henderson's Siren Head have filled the void. Those too will eventually fade in popularity, and in time, they will themselves be replaced by newer, maybe even more terrifying ideas. Myths and the basic fears that inspire them are immortal, even if the details change over time. And though we don't see the Slender Man around quite as much as we used to, now that you've watched this video, perhaps you'll be seeing him in your nightmares again sometime soon.